This is Illuminate, the podcast about men with good hearts, open minds, and a desire to make the world better. Welcome to Illuminate. I'm your host, Chris Tidrick, and I'm here with Brett Geist. Brett grew up about 25 minutes on the Illinois side of St. Louis and moved to Central Illinois in 2009 to join a Southern Baptist church where he met his wife, Rachel. They've been married for 13 years and have a 10-year-old daughter, Ellie. Brett has worked as a graphic designer and is currently a substitute teacher and stay-at-home dad. I know Brett personally as one of the extremely talented musicians in our church worship band. Welcome to the show, Brett.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so what I'd like to do is just jump right in. And one of the things I really love to learn about people is like what motivates them, what do they feel like their purpose and their drive is. So why don't you go ahead and answer that question? Like what's your why? Where do you find purpose and what drives you?
I've always known myself just to be just a very just a creative in general. And so I think that's where I find a lot of my purpose is just like wanting to create, whether it's like in music and or in design work is which I like when I was in college is what I kind of discovered that I like to do is to do like graphic design, web design type stuff. And I think that I've just kind of grown to know that that's kind of like my drive, like what I like to do, my purpose, what I always find purpose in my family, whether it's my parents or, my cousins, whatever. But I find ultimate purpose in my wife, Rachel, and Ellie, and just kind of being there for them and just kind of being like a part of, just a part of what makes us us. And I think those are probably the main things. And I really like to be an encouragement for people too. I know that people have, throughout my journey, people have told me how different ways that I've encouraged them, and I like hearing that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, fantastic. So let's talk about your journey a little bit and tell me kind of how you got to where you are today. And you can start wherever you'd like, as far back
Mhm.
as you'd like, but just would love to hear the kind of the story of what got you here.
I mean, anytime I answer this question, I always kind of start off with just, grew up in, a Christian family, my whole life. Like pretty much almost all of my family members are, Christians, always grown up in the church. I've kind of just always found my place in there. Um, and that's actually what landed me in Champaign-Urbana, was that just the people that I was connected with in my home church told me about a church plant that was being started in Champaign, kind of gearing towards college students, and so I thought it sounded really cool. I wasn't I was kind of I wasn't in college at the time, and so I was kind of looking for some sort of purpose of what to do, and so I just said yes and moved to Champaign. And I'd never been away from my family, at all in my whole life, and so it was a new journey for me to
Did you
move.
know anybody in Champaign?
Yeah,
Okay.
so the people that were a part of the church plant, I had known for like years, like through church events and other things, and so they were sort of like spearheading the church plant, and also like what the guy that was going to be leading the music, I'd known him for a few years, um and
Can,
so yeah,
can
so
you can you help me understand? You're using a term church plant. Can you help me
yes,
understand what that is?
basically a church plant is the the seed of a
Okay.
church. So it's like the very like beginning stages, like building from the ground up. So you have like a person who's going to be like the head pastor, and then a couple leaders, and that's pretty much it. And so you're basically
Okay.
just kind of building from the beginning stages up,
So
and hopefully,
it's kind of like starting a new franchise in a new town.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
And so hopefully it grows into like a fully formed church. And from the ones that I've been involved in, you usually get like 3 years of support from, like, in my case, the Southern Baptist Convention, or like the church planting, you know, parts of the Southern Baptist Convention.
Yeah.
And so they help finance you for the next few years until you can
Okay.
get on your own. And so that happened in around 2009 is when I moved here, and my wife Rachel was already a part of the church plant. She was actually going to school at U of I at the time. Um, and so we didn't really know much of each other, like, for the next couple of years after I moved here. Um, but that's where I met her. And
Yeah. So what
yeah,
then happened? The church that we belong to isn't the same church. So like
no, it's
where,
not.
how did that all progress?
Yeah, so I would say, so like the church that I came up here for lasted for about 10 years, but within it, there the head pastor, there was a lot of like issues going on with, like, um I won't get into like full details, but there were just a lot
Yeah.
of like abuse issues that were going on,
Mm.
and just not, yeah, just not good stuff. And it eventually dissolved. And so after that church ended, there was another church plant that was actually starting again from like somebody completely different, that we hadn't really known for, but they were sort of like in the same, as far as like theology goes, as far as values goes, they were very similar to the church that we were already a part of. And so we basically moved over there because they were just starting out and kind of needing help. And so we were like, okay, we didn't really want to be another part of another church plant, but there
This
weren't
was
really other.
it was also Southern Baptist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were part of like the same, yeah, same
Okay.
convention. And so we decided to give them help too. But at that time, my wife had been rethinking a lot of things that she kind of grew up on, and just a lot of the stuff that we were like taught within our church, growing up, and just kind of things that we were kind of told to believe, or things that we thought was biblical or right or whatever. She had been thinking a lot of things like differently, and kind of felt a little isolated,
Mm.
um, because I was still part of like the worship team, because I was still a part of the worship team in our previous church, and I was doing worship for this new church. And so I was kind of like already involved. I was kind of heavily involved already. But she just kind of felt left out, and was kind of was a little hesitant to really talk to me about it, just because I was, so involved in it. And she felt like she couldn't really talk to other people about it, or at least when she tried, she was kind of ignored. And so eventually, so we were part of that one for about 3 years. And then eventually got to the point where Rachel was just kind of came to me finally and was just like, I can't be a part of this type of church anymore, specifically a part of like SBC, Southern Baptist Convention
Right.
churches, because around this time, a lot of abuse allegations came out of the SBC, like covering up abuse, like years and years of
Yeah.
abuse. And it was a very big deal. And that was kind of the nail in the coffin for her, and also got me starting to rethink a lot of things too, because this is like the denomination that I had grown up with my whole life. And so I was just like, oh, there's nothing that can possibly go wrong, because
Yeah.
it's the one that I've grown up in. And so when this came out, it just caused it was just like a huge, like, it was like a car just kind of hit both of us. And you know and again, like I said, it was kind of the nail in the coffin for her. It's caused me to rethink a lot of stuff. And so she finally came and talked to me. She's like, I can't be a part of churches like this anymore, who are a part of, this
Yeah.
convention, who. And again, it just came back to a lot of the rethinking the theology that we kind of grew up on. And I listened to her. I listened to what she was trying to say, and again, they got me thinking. And
What were the emotions that were going through you like during that time? I imagine it was not an easy time.
it was a lot of doubt. Like the biggest thing was doubt of just
Mm,
like and extreme fear, because like my identity had always been within the church, and the thought of leaving this church, which I loved doing. I loved being a part of this community. Just the thought of leaving that and trying to find something new, because we didn't want to leave the church altogether. It was just this specific denomination we couldn't be a part of.
yeah.
But just the thought of leaving that was extremely fearful. And it's just like, I don't like it like causes like shakes like throughout your body,
Yeah.
of just like leaving something that you've known for almost your whole life. And but also just like sadness that like Rachel felt like she couldn't talk to me. Not
Mm,
because like she was like, not because like she feared of what I might do, but just like the things that she was rethinking. We've been told a lot throughout our lives, you can't really question these kinds of things. and
yeah.
and so again, for me it's like, well, if she's causing me to like question those, like, then that means I'm questioning a lot of my faith that I grew up on. And where is this going to lead? And
Yeah,
so
when it's foundational and you start
mhm,
questioning a foundation, like
yes,
there's a lot of deconstruction that has to happen.
yes.
And so like how did you go through that?
Basically, I where it initially started was just reading resources that I never would have touched in my life, like books, authors that who are considered quote unquote progressive.
Hmm.
Because like my family is like more conservative, like they would say they're beyond the more conservative side.
Yeah.
um, and so actually reading authors who are considered like more left, more progressive, whatever boogeyman word you want to use. um, and like actual like theologians who like interpret the Bible a little differently
Yeah.
than authors that I had been reading before. And so it kind of just started with just reading different topics of different authors, um, and then and also podcasts, like podcasts that we would listen to, of people who are talking about these topics. And also like like podcasts of people who have actually gone through deconstruction too, of their own faith,
Yeah.
and just kind of hearing their stories. And so yeah, that's kind of where the journey began. And then it just kind of took courage. Like it took like me the courage to finally say, you know if Rachel can't be a part of the church that we're going to, I can't be a part of that church either, because we're a team,
Yeah.
we're a partnership. And
And
so
it's central to your relationship.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then it just kind of started of, well, what are our values? What do we want to keep central? What do we want to look for in a different church? And so I just kind of looked around Champaign at, what other denominations there were, and just what they believe. Copper Creek was just one of the few that I had searched for. Watched the online, like watched their online services. And when we started searching, that was like it was like a year into, or it was actually only a few months into, when Chris Chisholm had just started there as worship leader. As soon as I saw him on the stream, I was automatically hooked, because he was
Yeah.
so great.
It's pretty
And being a
amazing. It's yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
being a musician, I was like, man, pretty good. And then, just listening to Scott, I saw, it was all just like, okay, this kind of feels right. From what I'm seeing online, it kind of felt right.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, "Hey, Rachel, do you want to check this church out?" You know, it's extremely different from what we came from. It's Presbyterian, and so and so we visited one of the services one Sunday, and like we were immediately welcomed, by the people who were there, and like once we were like in the service, again, I was just like, just feelings just started to come up of just like, I don't know if I want to keep searching right now, because this kind of just feels, because the environment felt very similar to what we came from. Because like Scott always says, surprise, you're at a Presbyterian church. And so it was just like, this actually feels very like, if you would walk into it not knowing that it was a Presbyterian church, you would think that it was like a church that we came from. It
Interesting.
would, yeah, like a conservative Pentecostal, church. And so,
But the message
um,
is very different.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
messages,
Yeah.
are very different, and the values are obviously very different. And that was one thing that we had known beforehand too, because going on the website, they make very clear of like what their core values are. We're an affirming church. We allow women pastors, and so those are like the two biggest, like, if any of my previous churches would see that, they'd be like, "Oh, that's a slippery slope. You can't go down that road."
Yeah.
But I don't know. At that point, when it just wasn't a problem for us to at least just check it out, you know.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so,
I I had a bit of a similar experience with Copper Creek. I had known Scott, who's the pastor there,
mhm,
for 10 plus years. Our boys were in scouts together, and but I had never seen him preach. And
yeah,
then during the pandemic, we happened to like start watching it. I'm like, wow, this message is like different than anything I've ever seen. And I can you hear that from almost everybody that comes to that church is they just felt instantly welcomed, and so that feels like it was your experience as well.
yeah, and the fact that they were like an established church already kind of helped too, because there was like, there was so much diversity as far as like age groups, um and just different backgrounds. It just felt good being a part of that, and not being a part of a church plant where it's like those are fine, but it's like it's a lot of work to
Yeah.
try and build that up. And so it was nice, it was just kind of refreshing for both of us just to be part of something that had been already been there. And the people were instantly like just amazing to us. And
So now that
yeah, yeah.
you've found a new church, you sort
Hmm.
of are reestablishing your identity within that church.
Hmm.
Like what are the things that, there are additional deconstruction things that you're still kind of going through? Are there other personal development things that you're working on?
I still find myself still like asking questions. That was kind of the interesting thing about like my previous churches, was that I kind of felt like I was kind of at this point, and I noticed it while I was there. I kind of noticed this part of this time when I felt like there was like nothing left to ask, like no other questions to ask.
Mhm.
Like I kind of like knew everything. Like there were no like more questions that I could possibly figure out, because everything was already known, and everything was already handed to me. Um, and so what's beautiful about Copper Creek, and what I love that Scott really pushes, is that we're always asking questions. And so that's what I love about it, is that I can
Yeah.
keep asking questions and actually feel safe. and that was another thing for Rachel, is that she can feel safe to actually ask these questions too, and not feel like she's, kind of being turned away, or, just given like the same answer every time,
Yeah.
because we had like an initial meeting with Scott when we first got there, and just me and Rachel and him, and he was like, "Ask me anything you want." He's like, I am open to all your questions," and and there were some that he didn't, he couldn't answer like right out, and we were like, we appreciated that, and so yeah, so I still find myself still asking questions and still wanting to know. I still have like this tendency to want to know, is this truly like biblical? Is this truly right?
Yeah.
But it's also nice to know that, like, I don't have to have the answer right away, or even just ever, because it's I just think there's beauty in that, and I can.
How does that piece feel for you? Because I think one of the things that when people are sure of things, there's a
Mhm.
stability in that, right?
Yeah.
To a certain extent. But then when you're like, well, I'm not sure about any of this, and I am going to continually ask questions about it, that's less stable in some ways. So
Mhm.
how does that feel for you to kind of be in this place now, where it's not just we know the answers, and but we're trying to divine the answers for ourselves, I guess now.
It's still very rocky for me, because, again, like, I'm 42, and I've always grown, throughout my church, all my growing up in the church my whole life. I've always just kind of had people in my life that kind of knew the answers, and that always felt safe. But yeah, but like now it's still rocky at times, but at least I know that I have like Rachel there, who is asking the same questions. And now I'm starting to find friends within Copper Creek who are asking the same questions, but you know are fine with not knowing them. And so you find safety in that too, and comfort in that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, that makes a lot of
yeah.
sense. It actually it segues really beautifully into the next thing I wanted to talk to you about was, it's obvious that you have a really strong, great partnership with Rachel.
Mhm.
And but I want to know, where else do you rely on for support? Where do you find or create community?
I do find it in like my parents, my brother, my extended family. Even though I know that like a lot of the viewpoints that I've come to now, uh, my family, like me and my especially me and my parents, my brother, we would definitely differ on a lot. Um, I know but despite those differences, I know that they're always like there to support me
Hmm.
and be there for me.
That's
And
fortunate.
so
There's a lot of people that
yeah,
have walked away from their church upbringings that don't get that kind of support.
exactly. Yeah, and well, the thing is that like we never left. We never strove to like leave our faith at all. It's
Yeah.
just a lot. It's just a lot of the values and a lot of the things that we thought were black
Yeah.
and white are now more gray, and how we think of things. And so, and I've had, when we left, I had conversations with, they were yeah, they were I had like brief conversations with my brother and my parents about, reasons why we left. And they know like where we are. They know that we love Copper Creek, and that we're um and they know where Copper Creek stands on a lot of like quote what they would consider controversial issues. Um and they don't agree with those, but again, they still support us, because they know that we're, at least I think they know. that, we're
Yeah.
still, that me and Rachel are still like striving to be like, Jesus followers, and still striving to, to walk in obedience, of the Lord, and because we still firmly believe in that. And so,
Yeah.
um,
I imagine, like, I grew up Catholic, walked away from it, and I won't get into the details of that, but walked away
yeah,
from it for 30 years and then came back to, the Copper Creek was my return to,
mhm,
any sort of spirituality, faith, religion, whatever you want to call it. I guarantee you, my mother, who may not agree with the things that Copper Creek stands for,
yeah,
is overjoyed that I'm back in church.
yeah,
Right? Yeah.
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 Yeah, I know that is the case for my mom, because like she like, I know that she watches me every Sunday whenever I play.
Yeah.
She may not watch the sermons or anything like that, but she'll tune in to watch the worship and watch me play, because she still says, you did a great job on that and stuff.
Yeah.
But somehow the issue of being like gay affirming has just kind of been like the crutch, big issue
Yeah.
with, so many things. It's sort of become like the dividing line now. And so, um but I find my heart is overjoyed every time that I get to go up there with Chris and worship next to him, and being able to play next to him, and growing to be like, he's grown to be one of my best friends, even though I've
Yeah.
only known him for a few years. And so, and he has a husband and two girls, and he's a great father from what I've seen. So I mean,
Yeah.
um so again, that's just kind of one of the things where, of just like, things that I used to believe just aren't making sense. And but
Yeah.
yeah,
When you get up
yeah,
close to the people
yeah,
who have been, the targets or subject of whatever, you get
yeah,
close to them, you know them as human beings, like
yeah,
all of that just washes away in my experience. It just completely
yeah,
washes away. Like getting close to people who are different from you in some
yeah,
way, just it washes all of that away.
yeah. And so, I again, I guess, coming back to the support question. I mean, I think just even despite that, I I know that I still have. I'm confident I still have the support of my family. Again, just even though, viewpoints are different, but
Yeah. So
um,
you mentioned Chris as a friend. What role does male friendship play in your life? It's a big curiosity for me because maybe in the last decade of my life developed really close male friendships, and not like most of my friendships growing like throughout the rest of my life were with women, with
mm,
female friends,
yeah.
and it's been really good for me. So I wonder. I'm always interested to hear what role male friendship plays in your life.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much my whole life has been male friendships, especially within, like, when I was in youth group. Like, there were definitely girls in my youth group that were friends, but they weren't as close as my male friends. Like, with my male friends, and you were always kind of encouraged to be more vulnerable and more close to the male friends anyway.
Hmm.
Is growing up in purity culture, that was
So
that
it's
was
a
a whole big
cultural
thing.
thing, yeah.
Yeah. Um, but also, like, I definitely just flocked to a lot of like male friends anyway. It was just kind of natural for me anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like all of my life has just kind of been with male friendships. It wasn't really until, I guess, my adult life, and I would say like, even after I got married, I actually felt like a lot of women were more of my friends than men. Sort of like the opposite effect with
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
where it was just like, but like, even in Copper Creek, I mean, most of our worship team, I have women on it.
Yeah.
And I actually find almost more encouragement from them than I do of the male friends that I
Yeah.
have. But yeah, so I mean, it's been kind of just a, it started off with male friends, and there are some male friends that I still keep in contact with, um, but but in those friendships, it's always been like you can be very open with them. You know, you can tell them your deepest, darkest secrets, and
That's fantastic.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and
It's
so
wonderful that you have that, because it's like in my
yeah,
experience, like the guy friends that I had, it was like really superficial. And
yeah,
it was the female friends that I could actually kind of dive deep with. And
yeah,
so it's in some ways I'm a little jealous that you've had that your entire life, that
yeah.
ability to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely still have that fear of being vulnerable with women friendships just because of how I grew up.
Yeah.
It was just like, yeah, you don't really tell women, you know, you leave that
Yeah.
to your male accountability or whatever, and
Yeah.
tell that. And there's still, and again, there's like
Yeah.
certain things that I wouldn't tell. I don't think it's appropriate to tell women, but I mean, it's just
Yeah.
like, um, but yeah, but I mean, it's actually the opposite effect of my wife because she actually feels more connected to male friends than she does with women. Like she has women friends, but she's actually told me many times, just like I actually like hanging out with my male friends and I like hanging
Yeah.
out with my women friends, and
Yeah.
so it's kind of the opposite effect of
Everyone
that.
sort of has a mix of it, right? There's no right or wrong answer there for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so let's jump into our lightning round, which is a series of 11 questions that I'm going to kind of throw at you quickly.
Okay.
Don't need to like dive super deep into
Hmm.
any of them. If you want to, take it down a road, you're certainly do that, but don't feel like you have to, spend 8 hours on a
Sure.
soliloquy about each one.
Yeah.
So, what would you say are your top three values?
Um, so these have kind of changed a little bit, especially within the last few years. But I would have to say like non dehumanization
Mm,
would be a top value. Equality and accountability. I think because it's always like I always find myself. I think that I'm a very like accountable. Like, I want to be an accountable person,
yeah.
like kind of admit when I've done wrong, and so yeah.
So
So I'm
I want to poke a little bit about at that first one.
yeah.
Non-dehumanization. What do you mean by that?
Even this is kind of new for me, so I'm still kind of learning
Yeah.
it too. But yeah, just respecting the fact that every person is made in the image of God. Like even like the most conservative people would say, we are all made in the image of God. But yeah, I would say that's part of like the crutch is just knowing that we are all children of God. We're all made in the image of God, and that kind of works into it just that kind of just works in how you think about that person. Even even if you don't agree with that person, even if like you know they may say things that are you know that you don't care for, it's like they have their own thoughts, they have their own feelings, and so just kind of being respectful of that and not dehumanizing them, and so
Okay. Thank you.
yeah,
Thanks
yeah,
for that explanation.
yeah.
So who is one role model you've had in your life?
Um, it's I don't know if I've had one. There are definitely people that I've looked up to. Um, if I had to name one, I think it would be my dad. My dad has always been a very like quiet and just kind of um, what would at the drop of a hat he'll do anything for you, and so I've just always kind of been that person too. I'm a very quiet person, but like I if you ask me to help you do something, like I'll do it, and I get a lot for that from my dad, and so I would say him. He's been my role model. So.
Okay. Who do you hope you are a role model for?
Um, I don't really have one. I definitely have a big heart since the reason I moved up here was to become part of a church plant for college students, and so I have a big heart for college students and wanting to kind of just be an example for them, because they have a lot of questions in life, and I kind of want to
Yeah.
be that for them. So
Oh, excellent.
yeah,
So, what's the one way that you make the world a better place for others?
I think it would be my reliability. I think that people have always said that I'm very reliable, and just kind of always you can kind of count on me to do a lot of
Yeah.
things. So yeah,
Yeah.
kind of be there for people. So
That's wonderful. That's a good
yeah,
thing to be known for.
yeah.
So, what's the hardest thing about being you in today's world?
Well, I'm a 9 on the Enneagram, which is like a peacemaker. And
Okay.
I think that trying to be a peacemaker within
Mm,
today's world is extremely hard. So I do the best I can, but yeah.
yeah. Peace kind of lives in the middle, and there's very little middle anymore, it feels.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Okay. Whatyour
I'm not confrontational at all. So it kind of goes in hand in hand with it.
Yeah.
So
Don't give up on peace though.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What's your favorite emotion?
I think love. I'm a very I'm a very emotional person to begin with. I love to show love to people, like towards people, and like I didn't know I didn't like when I started at Copper Creek, I didn't know Chris probably even a month before I told him I loved him.
Yeah.
Like I only
Yeah.
knew him for like a few weeks, and I was like, "Hey, I love you, man." And so
Yeah.
it's just like, yeah,
Yeah. I could see that. I've actually never said that to him, but I
yeah,
probably should because like he's just that type of human being that's easy
yeah,
to love. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, what's your least favorite emotion?
My least favorite is shame.
Mm,
Uh, yeah, I grew up on a lot of like shame of just like either whether it's like personal struggles or um just the churches that we were a part of kind of like harp on shame a lot. And so that's one of the things I've kind of had to deconstruct, the past few years too, is like, you know, trying to leave shamefulness behind. It's still there. I still feel it, but I don't like it at all. And so
yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It is one of the most destructive emotions on earth, I think. Um, what brings you the most joy in life?
right now, definitely playing music at church. Like as soon as I get in the car, like after a Sunday, I'm always like this has got to be a God thing, because the joy that I feel after playing music is just like I haven't felt joy like that in my past churches. Like there were times when I did, but just like a constant joy of just being able to play music with these people and get to know them has just been um it truly has just been life-giving.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that I was going to find that again, and I did. So
That's beautiful. I have a curious question. What is it
yeah.
like looking out on the congregation when you're playing? Like, what is it? Are you in the moment of the music, or are you actually experiencing it with the entire congregation? I've always sort of wondered that.
A lot of it's most of the time I'm just kind of focused on not playing the wrong note.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
And
a,
so I'm kind of so a lot of the time I'm just kind of mostly in my head. But there are times when there are worship songs that like I know pretty well, and so I'm able to just kind of be free and just kind of just play along with the music. And depending on what song it is, it's usually just like I could just be free to just kind of worship along with everyone else. And it's honestly and also it's amazing to see certain people within the congregation singing, because Scott says it all the time. It's like there are certain people he can hear like right behind him
Yeah.
singing, and it always brings him joy. And it's the same for me. Like when I can see people singing and actually, getting into the music and worshiping it just it's so life-giving. And so
Yeah.
yeah,
So what makes you the most proud of yourself?
I would say that that I'm not a domineering person. Like
Mm.
Rachel, even with our even with our transition, she was very grateful to not have a husband that was like, no, we're not gonna leave this church. You're gonna listen to what I say because I'm the husband, I'm the authority. You know, you're gonna go where I want you to go. She was very appreciative of that. And and there was also another friend of ours who um kind of has said the same thing about me, of just like, you know sort of like kind of be more like this man. He listens to his wife. He's not a domineering person. And so I think that I'm thinking I'm most proud of myself with that. And again, that comes from my dad. He wasn't a domineering person either.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
So where can you feel the most yourself?
Definitely at home. Rachel is pretty open with allowing me to just kind of be myself. But I know that I sound like a broken record, but I keep coming back to Copper Creek, is just because, like, again, for the first time, I just kind of feel like I can openly be myself and not afraid to show certain emotions and say certain things and think certain things. So yeah,
Yeah, that the welcome home sign over the doors
yeah,
to the sanctuary means something, right?
yeah. And I've always been like really turned off by those welcome home signs. But like you said, like this one just kind of feels like on point, like
Yeah.
truly. And so yeah.
Yeah. So, last question, and a way to wrap up our conversation today.
Mhm.
What is the one thing that you hope people take away from this conversation?
I think my biggest one, I was thinking a lot about this, of just realizing that, like, just because you deconstruct certain things of your faith doesn't mean that you have to lose your faith altogether. Even if it's like the most even if it's like on one of on s- even if you're changing your views on some of the most hot button, you know, controversial issues that, people draw the line on, doesn't mean that you're losing your faith. You're just trying to find you're just trying to find a better path forward, I think. And while still keeping your faith, because that's what I've tried to do. Is like, I don't want to lose my faith. I'm not trying to lose my faith. I still wholly believe in Jesus. I still wholly believe in a lot of even the things I used to believe, or a lot of the like conservative like things I used to believe. I still hold true to those, but there are just some things that I've changed my view on, that I think aren't as aren't as black and white as they used to be. And but I still feel God's presence in my life. I still love Jesus more than ever. And I think I actually have a deeper faith now because of it. And so,
Yeah. Well, thank you. This has been an amazing conversation. Really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed getting to know you a little bit better. You and I have sort of adjacently known each other
yeah,
for maybe a year now.
yeah, we've crossed
So,
paths. So,
yeah,
yeah.
so I appreciate you opening up and sharing this with me and with all of our listeners and viewers on the podcast. And I think what I'll leave you with is, keep up the hard work. This is not, none of this is easy. Becoming a better person, becoming a better, doing your part in a better world is hard work. And you're obviously doing that. So
Mhm.
thanks, Brett, for joining me today, and really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You can learn more about Illuminate at illuminate.substack.com. We are also streaming on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Thanks for listening and watching, and we'll see you at the next episode of Illuminate.